At the end of No Way Home, Peter Parker made a decision that most people spend the entire film waiting for him to reverse. He let Doctor Strange cast a spell that erased him from the memory of everyone who had ever known him. Not just strangers. Everyone. MJ, Ned, Aunt May's friends. Every person who had ever mattered to him. And he stood there and watched it happen. Then he walked out into a city that no longer knew his name, found a small, empty apartment, and started over from nothing. Most people watching that moment felt it as a tragedy. But here is the thing most people missed. He chose it. Not reluctantly, not as a last resort that was forced on him. He chose it with full understanding of what it would cost him, and he chose it anyway. And the question that Spider-Man Brand New Day is quietly built around is the same question that has no easy answer. Why would someone do that? Why would a person voluntarily erase themselves from the lives of everyone they love? Because here is what Peter Parker had spent years watching. Every person who got close to him paid for it. Not metaphorically, actually paid for it. With their safety, their peace, their lives, the people around Peter Parker were never just people he cared about. They were vulnerabilities. They were the things his enemies could use to break him. And at some point, loving people while being Spider-Man started to feel less like having something to fight for, and more like carrying something that would eventually get them killed. Psychologists call this a form of protective withdrawal. When someone who genuinely loves other people makes the decision to remove themselves from those people's lives, not because the love disappeared, but because the love itself became the source of danger. It is the most painful version of caring about someone, to care so much that you choose to become someone they no longer remember. But there is another layer underneath that, and it is the one that hits hardest. Producer Amy Pascal said something about this film that is worth sitting with. She said Peter made this choice because being Peter Parker had simply become too hard. Not being Spider-Man, being Peter Parker. Think about what that means. Being Spider-Man, the suit, the mission, the city, the responsibility, that part Peter could handle. He had been handling it since he was 15. But being Peter Parker, the civilian version, the one who had to sit across from MJ at a table and pretend everything was fine, the one who had to watch Ned build a life and smile like that wasn't breaking something, the one who had to carry the weight of what he knew while the people he loved carried none of it. That version of himself had become unbearable, so he chose to retire him. Not Spider-Man, Peter Parker. He kept the part of himself that could function, the hero, the protector, the one with a purpose and a direction, and let go of the part that needed things, the part that needed to be loved back, the part that needed people to know what he was carrying, the part that needed to be seen as a person and not just a symbol. Director Destin Daniel Cretton described grief as having transformed Peter into a workaholic, someone who devotes himself entirely to the job because the job is the only place where the loss doesn't catch him. And that is not a superhero story, that is a very human one, because most people have never erased themselves from anyone's memory. But most people understand the impulse underneath it, the impulse to make yourself smaller so the people you love can be safer, to withdraw from connection because connection keeps getting turned into a liability, to keep the part of yourself that can function and quietly put down the part that still wants to be known. Peter Parker did not forget MJ and Ned. He just decided in the most painful way imaginable that loving them from a distance he created himself was safer than loving them close enough for it to cost them something. And 4 years later, he is still there, alone in a small apartment in a city that doesn't know his name. Still Spider-Man, no longer Peter Parker. And the most honest question the film is asking is not whether he can stop the villain. It's whether he can remember that being Peter Parker was always worth the cost, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt.